Katherine Boo, Behind the Beautiful Foreovers, Life, Death, and Hope in a Mumbai Undercity. Dive into the heart of Mumbai's Undercity as Behind the Beautiful Foreovers unravels the complexities that engulf the lives of people residing in the Annawadi slum. The book delves deep into the aspirations and struggles of the Hussain family, who even in their comparative wealth face a myriad of obstacles. Witness how neighborhood disputes escalate and brutally expose the gaping chasms prevalent in the healthcare, education, and justice systems in India. Traverse through this gripping narrative to understand the impact of corruption, lack of basic human rights, and the hostile environment on the dwellers of this Mumbai Undercity.
Dreams demolished in Annawadi. The lives of people in the slum of Annawadi are dominated by the pursuit of dreams for a better future. The Hussain family, considered wealthy due to their garbage business, have aspirations of moving to a legal settlement. However, their dreams are dashed through a series of unfortunate events triggered by a small neighborhood dispute. Corruption, bribery, and false accusations rip apart the family's hard-earned savings, ultimately leaving them worse off than before. The hopes and dreams of a better future are universal, even for the inhabitants of Annawadi, an illegal settlement in Mumbai. Among them is the Hussain family, who dreams of buying a plot of land in a legal settlement and building a new home. Their garbage business earns them up to $11 a day, an impressive amount by Annawadian standards. However, disaster strikes during a home renovation, when the Hussains unintentionally damage a shared wall with their unstable neighbor, Fatima. Her jealousy towards the Hussains' relative wealth leads her to exaggerate the damage, demanding compensation. When the Hussains refuse, Fatima's anger spirals out of control, culminating in her self-immolation. Fatima's tragic death reveals a web of corruption and greed that threatens the Hussain family's lives and dreams. Inadequate medical care leads to Fatima's demise, while corrupt officials falsely accuse and arrest several Hussain family members for her murder. The cruel cycle of corruption intensifies, draining the family's savings on bribes to officials and payments to neighbors for their honest testimonies. Imprisoned and fighting for their innocence, the family's income dwindles, and they are forced to sell part of their hut to pay for legal representation. Ultimately, unable to afford the new plot of land they dreamed of, the Hussains lose it to another family and are left unreimbursed. The heart-wrenching tale of the Hussain family exemplifies the cruel reality faced by those in Annawadi. Despite their ambition and determination, dreams can be demolished by an unfortunate twist of fate and a corrupt environment that preys upon the innocent. Slum life's health hazards. The Hussains, considered well-off in their slum, face numerous health challenges due to the unhygienic environment. Animals like goats roam about freely, consuming waste and spreading diseases like diarrhea. The slum has no proper sewage system, hence, inhabitants dispose their waste into an already polluted lake, exacerbating health issues. Mosquitoes breeding in the sewage lake bring malaria, and vermin like rats constantly bite residents, leading to infections in a humid climate. The polluted air filled with sand and gravel from a nearby plant contributes to asthma and the spread of tuberculosis, causing more suffering to the slum dwellers. Annawadi's harsh reality. In the slums of Annawadi, basic human rights hold no significance. Workers are too intimidated by their employers to demand fair treatment, with young laborers facing the risk of getting discarded if they are perceived as burdensome. The police routinely trample on fundamental rights that Indian law supposedly protects. They beat up detainees like Abdul and attempt to extort money from them through bribes. Unfortunately, this is the harsh reality for slum dwellers who possess fewer rights than fellow Indians. Corruption and false hope. In impoverished areas like Annawadi, corruption runs deep, making life even more challenging for its residents. From the pervasive bribery to the misappropriation of government funds and non-profit donations, it's a constant battle for the people living there. The Bridge School, for instance, is a prime example of how greed leads to inadequate education for Annawadi's children, with an unqualified teacher running the school for the highest possible profit. Meanwhile, Indian democracy is tainted by corruption as well. Though voting provides a glimmer of hope for Annawadians to feel like legitimate citizens, bribes are required to even obtain a voter card. Despite the countless programs designed to uplift and support slum dwellers, the distorted reality remains: a corrupt middleman always seems to stand in the way of tangible progress and hope for these communities. Corruption infects healthcare. Slum dwellers are plagued by corruption not just in education and democracy, but in their healthcare system as well. Unscrupulous doctors take advantage of desperate patients by charging them for services that should be free and forging medical documents to mask their wrongdoings. Moreover, government officials manipulate crises to extort bribes from vulnerable families. In this broken system, the ailing suffer further injustice, as corruption thrives in every corner. One glaring manifestation of corruption in healthcare lies in how doctors swindle patients for services the Indian state should provide. As illustrated through Fatima's story, medical staff steal medicines and claim they're out of stock, coercing patients to buy the same medicines at inflated prices from nearby markets, further exploiting their desperation. To conceal their malpractices, doctors manipulate medical documents, making it nearly impossible to hold them accountable. For example, when Fatima eventually dies from a hospital-acquired infection, her doctor alters her admission papers to evade blame, claiming the extent of her burns was much worse than in reality. Corruption in healthcare isn't limited to dishonest medical professionals. Government officers like Purnima Pakrao conspire to create false charges against innocent families, such as the Hussains, in exchange for bribes. In this twisted system, those seeking care are left to suffer while the corrupt profit from their pain. Perils of slum children. In the treacherous slums, life is particularly challenging for children who face constant danger and often receive little support from their parents. Simple activities, such as crossing roads, prove hazardous due to careless drivers, with accidents often resulting in blame rather than compassion from parents. This demonstrates how children in these areas must assume full responsibility for their own safety, and are seen as burdens by their parents. Furthermore, when tragedy befalls children in the slums, like the case of 15-year-old Kalu whose murder was dismissed as a tuberculosis-related death, the authorities frequently turn a blind eye to the truth. The grim reality is that children in the slums navigate a perilous world with few advocating for their well-being. Ambition amidst misery. Imagine the struggle of living in Annawadi, a place where survival drives people to lengths they'd never imagine. For some, this means accumulating power and wealth by exploiting others, while others simply turn a blind eye to the suffering around them. One such individual, Asha, aspires to become the first female slumlord in Annawadi. She is determined to amass influence and wealth through illegitimate means, including prostitution, and demanding exorbitant amounts of money in exchange for her assistance. Despite the unethical ways of some, not everyone seeks to thrive by preying on others. Many simply choose to focus on their own survival and immediate family, unable to spare the energy for empathy or compassion in their harsh surroundings. Education amidst the slums. For residents of slums like Annawadi, obtaining an education is perceived as an escape route from poverty. However, children from these economically challenged communities often face significant hurdles. Despite their arduous work, the quality of education often remains subpar, further limiting their opportunities to break the cycle of poverty. The story of Sonu, a garbage collector by day and student by night, reflects this struggle. Meanwhile, Manju, aspiring to be Annawadi's first college graduate, discovers that local academic institutions fall short compared to their Western counterparts. Ultimately, despite high aspirations, educational achievements alone rarely prove sufficient for individuals like Manju to overcome the socio-economic barriers that define their lives in the slums. Hopelessness haunts the slums. Within the devastating slums, residents endure unbearable living conditions, pushing many towards the bleak escape of suicide. Fear, violence, and the mistreatment of women are among the drivers behind these tragic actions. Oftentimes, individuals find themselves caught between criminals and the police, with no one on their side. For women, abuse at home is tragically common, leaving them with no safe place to turn. Caught in these desperate circumstances, many choose the haunting finality of death as their only escape. In the harsh environment of the slums, hope can be a scarce commodity for residents like Sanjay and Meena. The ever-present danger and vulnerability to crime force individuals into challenging situations, where they feel trapped between violent criminals and ruthless police seeking easy justice. Sanjay, for example, witnesses a horrifying murder and, fearing for his life, chooses the desperate path of suicide to evade both the criminals and law enforcement. Meanwhile, young women like Meena face a different kind of danger in their own homes. Forced to abandon their education and bear the brunt of physical abuse from family members, their futures lie in arranged marriages within unfamiliar, distant families. Fearing a life of further suffering and loneliness, suicide becomes a heartrending way out for these women, claiming one life after another in the slums.
As the different facets of the lives of Annawadians are elucidated, we come to witness how the dream to transcend the harsh realities of the slum end up being shattered by unwanted circumstances. The book uncovers the shockingly corrupt system wherein slum dwellers cherish the act of voting, for it makes them feel legitimate citizens. However, they must still resort to bribing to secure their voter cards. Education is an escape for some, but marred by its own set of challenges in the corrupted system. Suicide emerges as an unfortunate consequence of despair for many, driven by fear and miserable treatment. The compelling tale of Behind the Beautiful Foreovers stirs empathy toward the people battling odds in Annawadi, showcasing the sheer will to survive against all odds in the face of adversity.